We wanted to grab you into our studio. It's a real pleasure to have you here. Let's talk about, I think we're going to talk about RT, and let's talk about the quote-unquote propaganda bullhorn, because that is, I think, the most famous quote that anybody has ever said about RT, right? So
what an honor.
Yes, what an honor. It's an honor to be called the propaganda bullhorn. I mean, it's a running gag almost, you know?
Right.
So how was it working for RT in America and with all the, well, with all this like reaction to it?
Right. I mean, there's this huge Cold War resurrection going on right now, right? And there's all these media wars, and working in DC was just hilarious because in DC you're surrounded by all these very generic establishment journalists who think that just reprinting government press releases is doing journalism. Of course, they don't take RT seriously, but it's only because they haven't really watched it. They just dismiss it. They generalize an entire news network as propaganda without actually being able to watch it and dissect the facts. And that's what I tell people whenever people do tell me it's RT propaganda. And I'm like, do you look at Al Jazeera and say it's Qatari propaganda? Do you look at BBC and say it's British propaganda? I mean, do you dismiss these entire news networks? Do you look at Rachel Maddow and say she's a General Electric corporate propagandist? No, that's ridiculous. It's childish. It's a really dumbed down way that people can just dismiss content that maybe will challenge their worldview and undermine their conventional wisdom.
Has there ever been a journalist that maybe initially had this opinion, this propaganda opinion about RT, and then has come up to you and said, no, I feel differently now after watching RT?
Yeah, no, I think my show also, after I was able to speak out against some Russian policies and unlike corporate anchors who have gotten fired, like Phil Donahue, after he spoke out against the Iraq War, which to me is actually really scary because that's not even a state-owned entity, and he still got fired on the MSM. So I think that really got people watching and saying, hey, like someone's speaking out against Putin's policies and still able to have their job and given room to kind of have that editorial control and room for dissent. And I think that really got people paying attention, and people started watching Breaking Dissent, and they were like, you know what, this is actually a really amazing show and covering issues that we actually care about, affect us, that we're not seeing anywhere else. And it really just, I think once people start watching the network, they realize how crucial and valuable it is and why it's so important.
You were not the challenge people's paradigms, and yet, like, I think the audience usually receives RT quite well. The same what happened here in Germany. So the journalists, the media was very skeptical, well, to say the least. But the audience was usually like, oh, okay, yeah, you have a different opinion, you have the other side. It was quite well received. So what is this battle between the media and the audience, you know? There's always like this difference in opinion.
Yeah, so I think, look, it's obvious that RT has a bias. It's Russia Today. It's in the name. It's absurd that people think that that's some sort of like crazy thing. Russia has every right to have a state-funded news agency just like every other country does. It's completely insane that people are calling to shut it down. It's completely insane that you have Ofcom or whatever the censorship agency is in Britain trying to actually shut down RT Britain for that. I look at it as, Al Jazeera, when Al Jazeera first started right after 9/11, the entire US government was calling it bin Laden's mouthpiece. They were calling it a terrorist network. They actually spent tens of millions of dollars to try to do like a covert operation where they were deciphering the lower thirds on Al Jazeera, thinking that Al Qaeda was broadcasting messages. So that shows you the mindset and the political climate and time, right? And now look at Al Jazeera; it's like very, it's very mainstream. So I think that right now, when people are trying to kind of resurrect this propaganda against Russia, it's very convenient to use RT as kind of that scapegoat. It's bullshit. It really is.
It's bullshit. How's it going to look in the future for you now? You quit RT, breaking the set. Are you going to continue to break the set? Are you going to be a political activist? Where's it going? So it was really hard. It was kind of intense doing a 5-day-a-week show in a studio for 3 straight years with kind of a skeleton crew. But I really enjoyed the on-the-ground investigations that I was doing outside of the studio, and I really want to do more of that. I want to go on the ground, get the stories, and I know it's going to be really hard. It doesn't pay. It takes a lot of time, and it's hard. It's hard to go, and there's really no other platforms that will give you that kind of space and editorial freedom. So if I can't find another one to host what I want to do, then I'll just go independent
and crowdfund my projects, because I feel like crowdfunding, people understand the abysmal climate of journalism right now and media, and they understand the failures. So I think that people really will step up to the plate and follow the journalists that they want to see succeed and support, and hopefully that's what I'll do in the future.
So are you going to go with crowdfunding? Or do you already have somebody who's going to fund your very critical journalism?
I know, well, that's the problem, is that I've made enemies across the board, right? I mean, called out every corporation under the sun, every government under the sun. So it's going to be kind of a hard road. And even the alternative press, it's too, I call it Israel. I've talked about 9/11 stuff, that it's almost too scary for even a lot of alternative press to tackle, plus the RT thing. I know entire news networks that you would be shocked of, even like grassroots organizations that have completely shunned RT. They don't even want to hire anyone from RT who's been there. They don't want to talk to anyone who's currently working at RT, and they won't do any interviews. And that's really sad when I see whole left journalists who understand the value of the network. They understand why it exists, right? But they're falling prey to the propaganda war and letting it win. And I think that that's really unfortunate. But I have made a lot of enemies, but I hope that someone will have the balls to take me on and know that this is what people want to hear. They want to hear raw, unfettered truth about things that are going on that really impact people, and hopefully they won't really kowtow to advertisers, and maybe they'll take a chance. We'll see.
Thank you so much. Thank you.